walking through a ghost town. Y'all ain't playing my sounds. Don't tell me to calm down. Don't tell me to calm down. Only time I go backwards is when I wanna moonwalk. Don't test me, my mood's wrong. Don't test me, my mood's wrong. We are who we say that we are. You were lost in the stars, and it's all from the start. Never running no pace, never on the right page. But we still read that book, and we still run that race. Ay. Mississippi Racer riding out, no shortcuts, no time for that. Mississippi Racer riding out till the wheels fall off, I'm driving that. Mississippi Racer riding out, we'll stop burning, strike the match. Mississippi Racer riding out, red light, green light, red light, good night. Ay. Red light, green light, red light, good night. 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 Time to chill, don't sweat it.
Good morning and welcome. It is Coffee and Sports. It is the morning show powered by Wire to Wire Network. Thank you so much for making us part of your morning routine. Whether you're watching us live on Facebook, live on YouTube, or maybe you're watching us live on Roku TV right now, thanks to the wonderful, wonderful people over at Northeast Sports Productions. I am Chris, and over there, that is Mo. Mo, happy Monday, sir.
Happy Monday to you, partner, and everybody out there listening to us live. We appreciate you guys. Busy sports weekend. I'm excited.
Mo, we got things. We got things to talk about this morning. Let's start in the NBA. Things have since happened since we last talked about basketball. Let's catch people up. So if you were not around yesterday, here is what you missed. Let's start with Mo, the Minnesota Timberwolves. They made history. They made franchise history for the first time in franchise history. The Minnesota Timberwolves swept a playoff series. They take down the Phoenix Suns 4-0. They move on to round number 2. And Mo, I mean, if we are being honest, there is a contingent of people that from the get-go, when KD went to Phoenix, when they brought in Beal, when this all went down and you're sitting here and you're looking at the start of this season, there were a group of people who looked at that and said, they'll make the playoffs, but I don't know if they'll get out of the first round. Has to do with health, has to do with matchup. Sure, we can say on paper they should be a contender in the West, but we all know what happens when you take great teams on paper and you take the history of KD and you take the history of different teams trying to build big threes. And here we are, Mo. We're one series in. They're one and done. Couldn't win a game. There's no way around it. This was a failure. This was an absolute failure. You get into the playoffs. You barely get in. You were almost a play-in. So you were able to avoid the play-in. But then you get into the playoffs and you can't win a game, much less a series. Mo, for a team that was supposed to push Denver for a spot in the finals, if you're Phoenix this morning, what does the future look like for you? Because you can't run it back, right, Mo? You can't sell that bag of goods. Well, let's just put it back together and we'll add a couple of things here and there, and we're gonna make another run at what? You didn't win a game, Mo. There's nothing to build off of here, right?
There's nothing to build off of, and the future is far from bright. They mortgaged their future. They don't have any picks, I believe, until 2030. They don't have any picks, so they're not going to get better through the draft. They're literally in a situation where this roster construction was put together to win now, and when they put them together, I was one of those people that was like, "This will not work. This will not work." It's not a secret. I am not a huge Bradley Beal fan. I never have been. I just thought the roster construction was flawed. James Jones put this roster together. I know a lot of people were talking about how Frank Vogel's job is in jeopardy. I would argue that the GM's job is in jeopardy because he's the one that did this. He's the one that mortgaged their future. To me, their future is simple. You're going to have to move two of those bigger names. And honestly, I don't think it's Devin Booker. I think you're going to have to move KD and move Bill. And here's the weird thing: you need to move KD and Bill, and you need to get back players that you got rid of. I'm not saying you're going to get back the exact same players, but they had two young, talented wings that helped them get to an NBA Finals. And James Jones went with bigger names, expecting bigger results, and it didn't happen. And if you run it back, what are you running back? A team that is built to lose in the first round, or a team who may not even make the playoffs? I just think it's a franchise that's in disarray. James Jones took a major gamble and it didn't pay off.
Mo, if let's say hypothetically that happens. Let's say they figure out a way to move Kevin Durant. I'm not even going to talk about where he's going to go, but let's just talk about it from the stance of he's playing for another team next season. What is this doing to Kevin Durant's legacy? Because if you look at the start, he was in OKC. They had a big three down there in OKC. You can argue that, they never really achieved the level they could have had they stayed together. That's fine. Then he has his success with Golden State. He goes over to Brooklyn, and it's a failure. Let's be honest. He left championships on the table with Golden State to go to do things on his own and to run away from the narrative of you joined the team you couldn't beat. You won your titles and your rings with the team that you couldn't beat. Then you tried to go do it on your own and you failed. Then you got yourself out of there to a new situation where you were supposed to be a contender there and you failed. So now if he goes to another team, obviously, Mo, and the last 2 or 3, is that being generous if I'm saying he has 2 or 3 good years left? I don't know. Injuries are always a concern with KD, but we'll say he has 2. Let's say he has 2 good years left in the tank. But can you even trust that a team that is built around KD to be successful is going to be that? Because you look at what he did in Brooklyn, not in a strong conference, with players around him. I'm not going to sit here and say he had nothing, but I'm also not going to sit here and say that he was set up to succeed and that he didn't fulfill his role, because that would be unfair too. And then he goes to the Suns with expectations, even though many said, they're not going to be better than Denver. The conversation easily was, 2 or 3. That's where they'll slot in, and we'll see. We'll see once they get in there. We'll see what Denver is looking like when they match up. That's what we're kind of talking about. Didn't happen. So, Mo, if he is moved to another team, how does that impact his overall legacy?
So I think that Kevin Durant's legacy to me is set in stone. I think he's going to go down as an all-time great player, but usually we have these really in-depth conversations and passionate debates about the top 10 players. He's not going to go down as a top 10 player all time. He's not. But he's a great player. He's probably in that second 5. If you're, and that's what it, with all this moving around and not succeeding, I think that's where that will put him. Now, like, granted, his career is not over. He could very well end up somewhere and he could win another ring or 2. That could happen. But right now, today, I think we acknowledge that he's a great player. He's an all-time great player, but he's not a top 10 player, which means that conversation that people tend to have, he wouldn't be part of. I think what he needs is something I'm not sure that can happen for him. He needs to be able to replicate what he did with Golden State. And here's the thing. He can go, the mistake he made with Golden State was because his reputation is he's super sensitive when it comes to social media, is he listened to what people said about how you have to join Steph and how it's Steph's team. It was Steph's teams. If there's no debating that Golden State, everything that whole universe is around Steph, but you were the best player and everybody knew you were the best player. And that should have been good enough for you. Had you not left, my guess is he would have had 2 more rings on his resume. And I just think that looking at Kevin Durant, a guy who loves basketball, but he seems to be searching for something, Chris. And I don't think he's ever going to get that validation that he wants because of all the moving around and not necessarily succeeding.
Now, one of the craziest things about that situation was, yes, not only was he the best player on the team, but Steph stepped aside for him. Steph changed his game to allow KD to get his shine. It wasn't even a situation where it was Steph's town, which it was, and you were 100% correct about that. But it wasn't Steph's town, and Steph was trying to be the hero on the floor. It was always Steph's town. But even Steph knew, hey, we are better if KD is 1 and then I am 1A or 1B or however you want to dice it up. And he did that. He was selfless. He moved aside for KD. But like you said, it wasn't enough. It wasn't enough because it was never KD's team. It was always Steph's team, even though KD was the best player. And even though Steph acknowledged that KD was the best player by the way he played, that wasn't enough.
Right.
So then he had to go and do the things that he did. Mo, before we wrap up the KD conversation, is there a fit that you can see out there right now where you're just like, if he somehow got to that team and they didn't lose a ton in the process, because I don't know what he's worth right now. I don't know what he's worth coming off of 2 failed experiments and someone who is, moving into the latter stages of 30 because he's over that, mid 30s mark, moving into that late 30s mark now with the injury history, with the unknown that comes with him now. That wasn't what you were getting when he was coming out of OKC, and that wasn't what you were getting when he was coming out of Golden State. So all those things factor into his market value. Is there a team out there? Maybe it's Golden State. Maybe they somehow lock him in. Don't know what that would look like because I don't know what his value is. But is there a team out there where you're like, if he landed there, I'm not saying rings, but I'm saying that it might be a nice end to his career as opposed to what we've seen the last handful of years with the Suns and with the Nets.
The Golden State thing is interesting because, look, I think Golden State would love to have him back because I think that would give them a legit chance to try to squeeze another ring out of the Steph Curry era, right? You'd be pairing him and Steph together. I would assume with KD on the floor, you'd like to keep Clay. The question really would be what kind of assets Golden State had to return to Phoenix. The teams that jump out to me immediately, though, because he would be in a different role, and I think at this stage in his career, also we both acknowledge he's 35, getting ready to be 36. So I think New York would love to have him. I think New York would be a good fit for him. I think Philly actually be a great fit for him. Him playing off of Embiid and Maxey. We're not going to use the word KD's the number 3, but quietly he would be the number 3. But I think at this stage of his career, if you said, Kevin Durant helps Philly win another title in a different role, like he still would be a star, it just wouldn't be his team. I think he could fit well there. Look, he's one of those few players that can fit in any system. The question is, though, what could you garner in return? Like Gene said, OKC, I would argue they don't need him. I'd even go a step further and say they don't want him. They don't want him. Like that, you know what I mean? Like, look at their roster. Look at SGA. Look at Jalen Williams. Look at Chet Holmgren. Where is he going to play? Because he's not going to come in and supplant any of them. It's a weird thing. Like there would have been a room for him, but I don't think OKC needs him. They don't need him at all. Like, and they have 1,000 picks, but I don't think they need him.
Well, looking back at some of the other action from the NBA weekend, the Pacers go up 3-1 on the Bucks. Let's be fair. The Bucks were missing a little bit of talent on the floor for that game, Mo. But here's the thing. I think the Pacers are going to win this series. They're up 3-1. It's all right there in front of them. And I feel like you're going to come out of this series if Indiana gets the job done. And the narrative is going to be, well, the Bucks were injured. Giannis was injured. Dame had the Achilles. He wasn't quite, which, by the way, he averaged, I think, 33.3 the first 3 games. Granted, he was doing it with the nagging Achilles. Let's not pretend that, the Achilles was just derailing his game, games 1 and 2 and 3, because it wasn't. But that's the narrative coming out. No Giannis. Dame had the Achilles. Neither of them played in game 4. And I'm not taking that away. That's a huge deal, Mo.
It's real.
But also, let's not forget, you're looking and you're talking about a Bucks team that with Giannis and with Dame, they weren't great at times after this coaching change was made. And I feel like, if you're Doc, you're looking at this and you're like, that's right. If we were healthy in the playoffs, it would have been a different ball game, Mo. But we weren't healthy. We didn't have Giannis. And then Dame got banged up. Who is going to make noise when number 1 and number 2 both go down? Nobody's coming back from that. In the NBA playoffs, we're going to be healthy next season. We're going to get Mo. That if that happens, we're burying the lead. We are burying the lead because this is a completely different narrative if they're both playing and they lose in 6 or 7, which, by the way, many people thought going into this series that if they were both playing, they were still going to lose in 6 or 7. But because of the injuries, that's not going to be the talking point coming out of this. The talking point is going to be nobody was going to overcome not having Giannis for an entire series and then losing Dame for part of it.
Sure. If you're a Bucks fan, that's what you're shouting right now. I'm sure that's what they were shouting last night. I was calmly speaking before the series started, and I thought they were going to lose the series. They were a sub 500 team after the trade. They weren't a good team. And I don't think the Pacers are world beaters, but they're better than the Bucks. And that was before Giannis going down. But yes, I actually think Giannis getting injured and Dame getting injured is the reason why Doc will be back as head coach. Nobody roots for anyone to get injured, but I think that there goes the narrative. Doc can go, look, we didn't have our guys, and they didn't. I get that. And so this talk about him maybe not being back, the only way he won't be back is if he resigns, which, by the way, I don't think that's off the table. I think Doc has realized, like, you know what, this coaching thing, a little stressful. I'd like to get back up in the booth. Look, the narrative, you laid it out, partner. They're going to say it was because of injuries. Injuries did play a factor, but if you're an honest fan, Milwaukee's Bucks fans, your team wasn't good. It wasn't good. The upgrade that you thought you would get from firing Adrian Griffin, you never got better. You have to look back and go, we were actually at our very best when Adrian Griffin was our head coach. And
that's a tough
you're an old team.
It's a tough pill to swallow, Mo.
And don't forget, this is an old team. This is an old team. Look, this is a very old team, and they will be that much older next season. Like, they need an infusion of youth, and I don't know where they go because they don't have a lot of assets to go out and pursue that. So they need to make some major changes, and I don't know how they go about doing that, because another thing is, it's not like Milwaukee is a high free agent destination. Nobody ever goes there of their own free will.
One of the series that I find to be the most interesting, Mo, is the Clippers and Mavericks series. Kawhi has missed half this series, and they're doing okay when he's not playing. Obviously, it's one of those weird things. I'm not saying they're better without him, but you look at this series, and if you said, okay, they're going to be 4 games in, Kawhi's going to miss 2 of those games. One of the games that he plays in, Mo, he's going to look okay, but, he's not going to be the normal Kawhi because he's just coming back from injury. I would say, well, shoot, that's not ideal for the Clippers. They're probably going to be down, 3-1 after that, because there's just no way. And not to mention the fact that Dallas played so well towards the end of the season, and they improved, and Luka and Kyrie got their thing going. But here we are, tied at 2. Kawhi didn't play in game 4. And Mo, now we're heading to game 5, obviously pivotal for this series to kind of swing the momentum. What are you seeing from the Clippers right now as far as what they're doing when Kawhi is not on the floor? And do you think that Luka and Kyrie have enough juice to push past this team.
So I want to give the Clippers credit because look, game one they blew the doors off the Mavericks. I mean, they just overwhelmed them, and it was because of great ball movement. They shot the lights out. They played very well. Game two, the Mavericks gut out a really ugly defensive grinded out game, which is weird when you talk about that with the Mavericks. And here we are now after game four, where the Clippers had a 31-point lead that got shredded. That the Mavericks actually walked them down. I think they even took the lead at one point. But I will give a guy credit who's often been criticized and ridiculed for not coming up big in the playoffs. James Harden was phenomenal the last couple of minutes of that game. He took over the game late in the game, and I'll give him credit for that. The Kawhi thing, it isn't weird to me. I wanted to know why he came back at all. He's clearly not healthy. You watch him out there and he's not moving. He can't move well on offense or defense. So he was hurting his team. They're much better without this version of him on the floor. And if Paul George is going to have the kind of first half that he had yesterday, it's going to be an interesting series. I came into this series, I picked the Mavs to win. I thought the Mavs would win in 5, and the Clippers surprised me a little bit. I still think the Mavs have the 2 best players in the series, and I still think they'll win the series. Look, game 5, somebody's going to take a 3-2 lead. I believe game 5 is back home in LA, but I'm going to go ahead and still say that Kyrie and Luka have more than enough. They've got enough talent around them. You just got to give the Clippers credit. They've played a lot better than I expected, especially defensively. So this and the Philly series has turned out to be the 2 best series of the first round.
And Philly's where we're going next. The Knicks take a 3-1 lead in the series, Mo. Are we talking we're done as far as this? You talked earlier last week. You thought that Philly was going to be competitive and make a series out of this, even though they went down early. But now it's 3-1, where the Knicks are looking to close it out. Do you think Philly can at least get to 3-2 and see a game 6? Or is this just, it's over? It's time for the Knicks and we're moving on.
I think Philly can get to a game 6. I just think if you're asking me who I think is going to win, I stick with the Mavericks. I'll stick with the Knicks. I just think that even though he's put up really good numbers, you can still see that Embiid's not 100%. He's mostly a jump shooter. And when it comes to the things that help defensively, like rebounding, he can't pursue the ball. So if the ball doesn't come right to him, he's not going to get it. Like he just can't move very well. I think when you look at the Knicks, you can shut Brunson down, but they're getting timely shots and big plays from a guy like Josh. Josh Hart had 15 rebounds yesterday.
Yeah.
Josh Hart is 6'4". He's not 7 foot or 6'10". He's 6'4", and he just wanted it more. He's outworking them. This has been an ugly drag out series, but I think Philly will win. I think it goes a little bit longer, but I still think the Knicks are going to win the series ultimately, just because I don't think you're getting the best version of Embiid, a guy that they were counting on, Chris, who was supposed to be a big acquisition in not free agency, but during the trade deadline, was Buddy Hield, and Buddy Hield has been the Buddy Hield that I've always known. He's been that guy. When there's high expectations, don't count on Buddy.
And Mo, you are familiar with Buddy. Laker Nation has wanted Buddy for the longest time.
I don't understand that.
And Mo, you have been standing there every step of the way saying, nope, don't need that here.
Yep. Yeah, he's one of those guys that's going to be really good on an awful team. But don't put him anywhere where there's high expectations.
The NBA playoffs roll on this evening. It is the Heat and the Celtics. It is game 4. Boston leads the series 2-1. Obviously a chance to take the 3-1 lead tonight and really put the stranglehold onto the series. The Heat stole game 2. Boston looked great in games 1 and 3. So, Mo, are we thinking more blowout tonight for the Celtics, or are the Heat going to be able to even this up and put the pressure back on Boston by tying the series up at 2?
So conventional thinking tells me that the Celtics should take a stranglehold over this series, but Miami is the strangest, most unpredictable team I've ever seen, and they've been like that for the last 3 or 4 years. So I believe the Celtics will take the stranglehold, but don't hold me to that because tonight Miami might come out and shoot 45% from three and blow the doors off the Celtics. I have no clue what Miami's going to do. I think Bam Adebayo. I think he felt embarrassed with his effort the other day. So if nothing else, I know Bam's going to play very well tonight, which means that's bad news for Porzingis. But I don't on paper, Chris. Miami shouldn't have the firepower to compete with Boston, and yet I can't guarantee a win. I could just say everything you know about basketball says Boston is going to take over this series and go back home and finish it. And yet, like I said, Miami's so bizarre. You just never know.
The Thunder are looking to wrap it up with a sweep against the Pelicans. Obviously, the Pelicans are not at full strength right now. They're not at full power, and you can see it. There's been moments where they've been completely blown out. There's been moments where they've played close, but just haven't been able to really dig in and hang on because they don't have the talent right now, Mo, to stack up against the Thunder. Any chance the Pelicans steal one and push us to a game 5 for maybe a gentleman's sweep, or is it just ending tonight?
I think it ends tonight. They have talent. Granted, their best player Zion is not in place, but this would have been an opportunity for a guy like Brandon Ingram to step up. I'm not saying he had to outplay SGA, but you could outplay Jalen Williams. You could be better than Chet Holmgren. And I'm not denouncing either one of those guys. They're talented young guys. And my point is, he hasn't been better than their third best player.
Correct.
Yeah, you know what I'm saying? So if he's not going to show up, if CJ McCallum's not going to show up, they're going home, and there's no indication they're going to show up tonight. So, yeah, I think it's a clean sweep.
Mo, then, of course, we finish with one that's near and dear to your heart. Los Angeles fans are saying, so there's a chance. You're telling us there's an opportunity.
Always.
The door has been left cracked open. The Lakers avoid being swept for the second year in a row by this Denver team. They now trail 3-1. Game number 5 is tonight. Yes, if you're playing, Mo, there's a chance. Now we go from sweep to gentleman's sweep. Are the Lakers going to go 3-2? Are the Lakers going to keep fueling the talk for the last 24 or 48 hours by Laker Nation, which is, don't let us hang around, Mo. Don't let us hang around. LeBron's hungry. Okay,
Right.
well, we weren't really saying that going into game 4 when you were
Right.
down 3-0. But now that you won one, apparently people are hungry. There's a chance. Okay, Mo. I think it ends tonight. Laker Nation says, don't let us hang around. I say, okay. What say you?
I say if Jamal Murray's calf strain is just the type of injury that's a nagging one and he's still 90% of himself, then it ends tonight. If he's got a calf strain and it's to the level of, let's say, what Giannis's is, that literally changes the series. And I'm not saying that as a homer. I'm not rooting for no one to be injured. But if Jamal Murray has a serious calf strain, he's not playing tonight. And if he's not playing tonight, I'm not guaranteeing a Laker victory, but it looked pretty good because he is their closer. And Joker's their best player. But when Joker goes to the bench, the Jamal Murray minutes are critical because you can run your offense through him. Without Jamal Murray, you can lock in on Joker and dare the role players to you would actually put them in different roles. I'm just saying that I look, as a basketball fan, I hope the guy is close to 100% and it's just a nagging injury. If I want to be selfish and be a Laker fan and go well, maybe they need to set Jamal Murray tonight and rest him and let him go for a game 6. Like, you could go that way. But yeah, I think the series now really hinges on if he's healthy. He's going to go tonight. They're going to close out the series. If he's not, it becomes a series.
So, Mo, there was this little thing called the NFL Draft.
A little thing?
It's a little thing called the NFL Draft that took place these last few days. And before we get there, we have a couple of wrestling nuggets to talk about, and one of them is related to the NFL draft. We talked the question here after what transpired on AEW this past week. What was Tony Khan going to sell the injury and show up at the NFL draft in a neck brace? And to his credit, Mo, he did. He was sitting in the war room of the Jacksonville Jaguars in a neck brace, selling the injury from AEW Dynamite. And to that, I say, bravo, Tony. Bravo for selling the injury. Bravo for putting forth the storyline. I criticized you a lot for the way the story unfolded last week on AEW. I thought it was done horribly. I thought there were a bunch of missteps along the way, but it happened. It's over with, and now we have to move forward. That's how storytelling works. And you sold the injury. Yeah, and Keys in the chat being like, but Chris, he was still doing. I know he was still moving his neck,
Right.
but at least he was wearing the neck brace. Guys,
did someone not tell him that when you have the neck brace on, you're not supposed to be swinging back and forth like that?
That's correct. He didn't know that. Again, they don't know how to tell the stories, Mo. So he knew enough to wear the brace. He just didn't know enough to be stiff. He didn't know enough to turn the upper body like this, as opposed to turn the neck. No one told him that part, but I'm still giving him his flowers for wearing it and actually trying to progress the story. Speaking of storytelling, our second wrestling nugget this morning, it's not official, but it's unofficially official. The PG era in WWE is over. We saw that with some of the stuff with The Rock and Paul Heyman building on the road to WrestleMania. We've heard rumblings with the Netflix deal coming to fruition in less than a year now, and them being over there for at least 5 years. The deal is up to 10, but they have the opt-out after 5. But with moving to a streaming platform like Netflix, it really opens up the war chest, Mo, of what you can and cannot do with you not being on cable TV anymore. So everyone was kind of like, will we see it? Are we going to see it? Then The Rock did what The Rock did. Heyman did what Heyman did. And no, we're not going to go back to the Attitude Era. And no, it's not going to be ridiculous, in-your-face nonsense, because they are still trying to cater to a younger audience and have a whole family experience. But Mo, I do think in certain moments, in big situations, in big storylines, you're going to see a little more. You're going to see a little more than we've seen the past 7, 8, 9, 10 years in WWE. And Mo, I'm all here for it.
I am too. I think there's the way you can have some of those edgier moments if it's done right within a storyline. Like, I'm with you. They're not going to push the button and go all the way back to the Attitude Era. I think that Triple H and the creative team, they're gonna come up with creative ways to have those kind of moments. And like you said, I'm with you. I'm here for it. I love the Attitude Era, but I don't miss it, if that makes any sense.
Oh, that makes perfect sense. Before we get to the NFL draft, 2 tidbits of news coming out of the NFL that are not necessarily draft related. One is the Cowboys have reunited with Zeke Elliott. We heard that there was mutual interest between Zeke and Dallas, and they have come to terms, and Zeke will leave the Patriots because he was a free agent anyways, and he will return to the Dallas Cowboys. You know, good for Zeke. Good for Zeke. Good for him, proving that he still had juice left in the tank when he left. Because let's be honest, his last year in Dallas wasn't great. But he goes to the Patriots. They have some injuries. He's able to shine the second half over there and kind of show what he can do in a Patriots offense that wasn't necessarily a high-power offense, but they utilized him in the passing game. They did some different things with him where you were like, and if you were a Zeke fantasy owner, you were like, okay, Zeke, okay, with the catching the football, with the yards, okay, Zeke. So he's a security blanket. He's familiar. He knows the system. It just made sense for me, Mo. I'm still not super confident in their running back situation over there. I'm not saying Zeke's going to come back and he's going to be a world beater in Dallas, but anything to make QB1 more comfortable, anything to put people around him that know exactly what they're doing in that system, it's not a bad thing, in my opinion.
No, and you're bringing back a player, like you said, who's not only familiar with the system, he's a security blanket for QB1. And I think this version of Zeke Elliott can be a solid football player. You're not going to get a 1,200-yard back, but what if you got an 800-yard back and he gets you 9 or 10 touchdowns in the red zone? There's nothing wrong with that. He's also tremendous in pass protection. And what we saw with the Patriots, he's become an asset in the passing game in terms of catching the ball out the backfield. So I think Zeke's not going to move the needle, but I do think that he can be productive and he's going to make Zeke feel good, right? In the end, doesn't that matter? You want Dak Prescott going, hey, Zeke's here. That makes me more comfortable, more from a familiar face in a year where I think a lot of guys in Dallas their future is kind of up in the air. So, yeah, I think it's a good move. I don't think it's one of those moves where the Eagles or the Niners or the Lions are like, oh, no, Zeke's coming back. We got a scheme for him. I don't think it's that kind of move, but it's a solid move.
Mo, some turbulence coming out of the Bay Area heading into the draft and the weeks leading up to it. There was a lot of Ayuk talk. Ayuk wants a new deal. Ayuk's been involved in trade rumors. And then on the back burner of all of that, there's always been this lingering Debo conversation. Other teams are interested in Debo, but it seemed like Ayuk was always at the forefront. If one of them was going to be moved, it was going to be Ayuk. Well, we learned during the draft that no calls were taken, but it doesn't mean they weren't made. But right. No calls were taken by San Francisco in regards to discussing either of them being moved. But what the Niners did do, Mo, was they drafted a wide receiver that you could argue has a skill set pretty similar to Deebo Samuel. And now we come out of the draft, and the talk in the Bay Area is if they were going to move one, the preference would be to move Deebo, not to move Ayuk. And Mo, you said it before here on the morning show. If you're just looking at pure talent at the wide receiver position as a wide receiver, I think we can both agree that Ayuk is the better wide receiver. Now, obviously, Deebo can do things that Ayuk cannot do. But, you also have this guy. Don't know if Bay Area fans forgot about him. His name is Christian McCaffrey. He does a lot of really special things out of the backfield, including catching the football. So I think you can make the argument that if you upgraded or maintained the same wide receiver skill set and you just lost the running back side of it because Deebo went out, I think you're okay, Mo. I don't think you're losing much if you're like, well, McCaffrey's got to touch the ball 3 more times a game now. Oh, shucks, Mo. Oh man, you got to give the ball a couple more times to maybe one of the most electric running backs in the NFL. What are we going to do? What do you make of the Deebo situation if you were your best friend, John Lynch, who you love every move he's ever made in the Bay Area? Are you moving Deebo over Ayuk if you have the opportunity to? Are you trying to keep the band together? What do you think is going to happen with that wide receiver room as we get closer to training camp?
I think John Lynch wants to keep the band together, at least through this coming season. But if you were going to move one of the two, you're going to move Deebo. You're going to move Deebo, even though a lot of people will say Deebo is the heart and soul. He's a lot of things, but he's not their best wide receiver, and he's very expensive. Like how long ago was it that he had that monstrous season? I think he had like 2,400 total yards from scrimmage. That seems like a long time ago. And even when it happened, I was saying at the time, this is just a monster year, but it's not who he's going to be every year. You know what I mean? Like a lot of that wasn't receiving yards. A lot of that was a lot of other things that he does well, but he's not a great receiver. He's not a great route runner, and he's got a big cap number. So look, he wants to keep the band together, but if I'm moving somebody, if I'm the GM, I'm moving Deebo. The question is, how many teams want to inhale that contract? And do they value him like the Niners do? Like, Do you think the Lions would go, yo, we can get? I don't think so. I don't think everybody, because he's got a particular skill set, and I just, you know who might value him? Jim Harbaugh might value him.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think Jim Harbaugh would use him similar to the way he's used with the Niners. He might value him that way, but I don't think a lot of teams would value him, or at least not at that cap number for what he does. I thought the pick of the wide receiver Pearsall was a little curious because I don't think he was the best wide receiver available. I mean, I don't know. Maybe his dad is friends with John Lynch or he knows somebody, but I don't think he was the best wide receiver. He's not a bad player. He's okay, but he's okay. I like if you look
Mo
at him.
does not trust John Lynch. Mo is not giving Lynch the benefit of the doubt anymore. Fool me once, shame on me. It's not happening again, John.
Right. Well, look, let's be fair. If you're a fan, you know, we have our highs and lows with GMs. The thing about the GM is when you make a pick that nobody saw coming and it becomes a star, you're a genius. If you get ahead of yourself and you go, I'm thinking outside the box, I'm going to pick this guy, and he's not nowhere near what you projected, you're an idiot. Look, John Lynch left up. I said it before. If Trey with the Trey Lance deal, that alone should have got him fired. He should have been fired 10 times over, but he left up because who came out of nowhere? Mr. Irrelevant became a starting quarterback, right? Like, but nobody saw that coming. That wasn't like John Lynch in the war room going, just like I planned. There's no way he planned it. So I thought taking the receiver with that pick that high, I would have taken a better receiver. I would have taken the Niners have a lot of versatile receivers. Ayuk has good speed, but they don't have anybody that takes the top off the defense. I would have went for somebody like that, somebody dynamic. Now they did get a young man later in the draft who does have dynamic speed, but he's so small. When you start talking about guys that are like 168, you're going to struggle to get off the line of scrimmage. Guys are going to be literally bench pressing you and holding you in place. Like, so I'm not killing John Lynch. I just thought it was a curious pick.
Mo, let's get into the first round of the NFL draft. We're going to have draft coverage all week long here on the morning show, but we're going to do it in bite-sized, consumable, delicious little nuggets. So let's start with round one. We'll go pick by pick to close out the show today, and we'll just kind of see where we end up. We all knew what was going to happen with the first pick of the NFL draft. We all knew that it was going to be Caleb Williams. We've all had the conversations. How is he going to be in Chicago? Does he actually want to be there in Chicago? Warm weather quarterback going to a very cold weather, wind conditions, elements type of city. But one thing you cannot deny, Mo, is the talent that Caleb Williams has and the immediate impact that he is going to make and the immediate attention that he is going to bring to this franchise. I'm not saying he's going to be the next greatest coming at the quarterback position, but I think even his floor is he's going to be a good quarterback. And I think that's, if you're the Chicago Bears, that's kind of how you look at it. Is the ceiling Hall of Fame? We don't know. People think it is. A lot of people think it is. But I think the one thing that most people could agree upon, Mo, was his floor is he's going to be above average. And if you're above average at the quarterback position, you're going to put yourself into a nice spot to do some things in the NFL. So we'll see what happens.
I like the way you phrased that. His floor is he'll be pretty good, right? If that's the disappointment, like, well, he was pretty good, but yeah, I can see that. To me, Caleb Williams has a legit chance to be, let's say he doesn't reach his ceiling, but his floor is, what if his floor is Jay Cutler? That's not bad. That's not bad at all. Jay Cutler was hella talented. He just underachieved. But I think he could be, I'm with you. I think his floor is he'll be very good. And if nothing else, he's going to make history, because I guarantee you he'll be the first Chicago Bear quarterback to throw for 4,000 yards.
And it's probably going to happen this upcoming season, because the one thing that he has that other Bears quarterbacks have never really had, he's got some pieces on the offensive side. He's got some weapons over there to work with. And I'm not saying Justin Fields is looking back right now being like, really? Y'all couldn't get me. Y'all couldn't get me a little something while I was there. But Mo, he might be looking back saying, how about that? You bring this guy in and he just has a treasure trove of options rookie season. Yeah, I was over there for a minute and I had nothing. I had nothing to work with over there. What did you do for me? You went and got me the guy from Pittsburgh. That was an absolute head case. That's what you did for me over there.
The head case who's not even is he even in the league anymore? Like, wow.
He was a Dolphin, but he's a free agent this season. Dolphins didn't
Right.
pick him back up, so that's where we are there. Pick number 2, all the smoke. We're taking J.J. McCarthy. J.J. McCarthy's rising up the ranks. The Commanders go with Jayden Daniels. I love the pick. I'm torn because I don't think we've seen the ceiling of Kyler Murray in the NFL. And I think that injuries have hurt him a little bit, and the lack of really great playmakers around him and an offensive line have hurt him a little bit. And Jayden Daniels does not have an offensive line. I'm not saying he does, Mo. They have the worst line in the league. So I'm not saying he's going to go to Washington with an offensive line. But I think it's fair to say that despite their personal history, Cliff Kingsbury likes a certain type of quarterback. And although personality-wise, him and Kyler were not it, Kyler's skill set-wise is what Cliff likes. And because of that, I love the move of Jayden Daniels to the Commanders. I think it is a great fit on both sides. I think he is going to have success there. Again, you look at it, he's a little small. You want him to put on some weight. You always say that, though. Any quarterback that doesn't meet what you think your base stats are for height and weight and frame, if he needs to put on 15, I get it. I live with Tua. I hear it all the time. Tua actually shedded weight this offseason because people felt he put on a little too much weight. It's wild, though. It's absolutely wild. But I like the pick. I think he's going to do fine in Washington.
I like the pick. I like his skill set. Love his skill set. He has the straight line speed of RG3, but unlike RG3, he can make people miss. He's got great arm strength. I think he's vastly underrated as a passer downfield. Like I think this kid's gifted. I know we don't deny what Caleb Williams has in the toolbox. That I don't know that this kid doesn't have as good or better career. Like that's how talented I think he is. So I think it's a great pick for Washington.
And Mo, let's not forget with Jayden, and it's such a ridiculous thing and it went viral, obviously, but you can't forget what transpired when he left ASU. And you see the video, and his former teammates are emptying out his locker, throwing his stuff in the garbage, crap talking him on his way out. And then, oh, by the way, he just goes and wins the Heisman at his next stop, and he's the second pick in the NFL. Like, I'm not saying he needs redemption. I'm not saying I'm not saying what does or does not fuel him. But just for someone who is not connected to this kid at all, don't know what he's thinking, don't know how he's feeling, a part of me is like, that's great. That's great. Because y'all chose to clown on him, and he just put his head down, did his thing, and here he is, Mo. Here he is. And I don't know where those players are now. The ones that were recording the teammates throwing his stuff away, I don't know where they are right now, Mo.
Well, they didn't get drafted in the first round. I know that much. Look, I just think that he's a perfect fit. The Commanders are trying to go into a new era. He's going to be the face of that franchise for, in a perfect world, barring injury, for the next 10 to 15 years. And like you said, look, the only fear I have as a fan is obviously that offensive line. That's not a good situation, and they can address that. But thank God he's got wheels. Take off, man. Don't sit in the pocket and take that beating. Use those wheels.
The Patriots also don't have a great offensive line. They drafted a quarterback. They passed up the opportunity to gain a lot of picks as well. They were called by the Vikings and the Giants. The Vikings were offering 3 number ones, both of their number ones from this draft and their number one next season. The Giants were offering the 6th pick in this draft and their number one from next season. It looked like both of those teams wanted to go up there and get the quarterback that the Patriots got, which is Drake May. Obviously, we've talked about this before. We joke about the offensive line in New England. They got Jacoby Brissett in there for a reason. Drake May is obviously going to be a successful quarterback, I believe, in this league. But again, I'm not trying to sit here and start a Drake May versus Mac Jones conversation.
No.
But I am going to say that if you looked at what happened with Mac Jones year one, he found a moderate level of success. He went to the playoffs. He put up some numbers. He had some competent offensive minds and pieces around him. And then the wheels fell off. Mac Jones is not an overcomer. Drake May might be an overcomer, but he's going to need pieces around him, Mo. He's going to need weapons on offense. He's going to need a line that can protect him long enough so he can throw the football. I'm not saying that this is going to get them to division contending this season, but like their new head coach said, we need to address the quarterback position, and then we need to go from there. And to that, Mo, I will say, check. You have addressed the quarterback position. Now build it out from there.
Yeah, look. Well, what's the line? Marry the quarterback and the quarterback and the coach, and Gerard Mayo went out and they got his guy. I guess my question to you and anybody out there listening is, though, does Drake May start from the jump, or do we go old school and let him maybe learn for season one, or maybe learn for half the season? Maybe Brissett doesn't play so great and Drake May takes over in week 6 or 7. Something like that. I guess the question is, do you think on opening day Drake May is starting?
It's tough because when you draft a quarterback that high, the fans are going to want to see it, right? When you take him in the top 5 or you take him in the top 10, now it's, well, you invested that heavy in him. You think he's the guy. Let him go play. But at the same time, the Patriots need to look at what they have. And if they head into the season and their line is subpar or average at best, and they addressed offense big time in the draft. You knew that Bill Belichick was not a part of this draft.
Right.
Because I don't know the last time the New England Patriots drafted this many players on the offensive side of the football. It was probably before Belichick arrived, to be honest with you. But at the same time, I think the Patriots organization is smart enough to look at this and say, we're not Super Bowl contenders this upcoming season. So let's do this the right way. If we think he needs to sit for half a season, if we think he needs to sit for a month or two, if we think he needs to sit for the first quarter of the season and just to kind of see where we are, get other people, the line, the position players up to speed to where they need to be so they're all gelling, then I think they should do that. I do think, though, Mo, I think they're going to be pressured to start him day one. I don't know if I would do that, but I think the pressure is going to be there.
Yeah, I think you're right. I guess I'm thinking how I would treat him, how I would bring him along. I wouldn't rush things. This is not a sprint. This is a franchise that's literally trying to flip the script and build up with the draft and a new regime. And I don't need to see him right away. I need to see him in his playbook, and I need to see him doing his thing in practice, and I need to see him in preseason. But if he's not ready, and I know he's not ready, or I know our offensive line and the skill positions around him aren't ready, then I'm not going to be in a rush to put him out there. Like, no offense, that's why you have Jacoby Brissett, like you said. Like somebody's got to take those snaps. Somebody got to take that beating. I'm not going to let my future quarterback, our franchise quarterback, do that if he's not ready. I'm not in a rush.
At number 4, the Cardinals take a playmaker, Marvin Harrison Jr. That's amazing for their quarterback over there. Kyler's going to be happy about that. At number 5, the Chargers need an offensive line. They got a great one in Joe Alt. At number 6, maybe surprisingly to some, the New York Giants don't go quarterback. They go with what some said was the best wide receiver in this draft, with Neighbors coming out of LSU. At number 7, the Tennessee Titans take J.C. Latham. They would have loved if Alt fell into their laps. J.C. Latham is not what Alt is. He is still a good offensive lineman.
Absolutely.
But, man, they would have loved to have Alt fall in their lap. But, Mo, we're going to spend our last couple of minutes on pick number 8, and that was the Atlanta Falcons taking Michael Penix Jr. I think I'm going to be the contrarian here, Mo, because I don't hate it. I don't love it. But at the same time, and this appears to be the situation, it appears that the head coach loved him. It appears that the general manager loved him. And if your two decision makers are that heavily invested that he is the guy, and you're looking at a 36-year-old quarterback coming off an Achilles injury, I know you just paid him $180 million. I understand that, Mo. But if your GM and head coach love him, and all of the reports coming out of Atlanta are that they absolutely loved him, they didn't think he was going to be there. They weren't going to trade up to get him.
Right.
But they didn't think he was going to be there at 8 because they thought somebody was for sure going to jump ahead of them to grab him. And then he was there. So I'm okay with it, Mo. I am okay with it because I don't think there was a pick they could have made at 8 that would have made them a Super Bowl contender. And now because they didn't make the pick, then now they're not a Super Bowl contender.
Right.
And people are talking like that. People are talking like, well, if you just made a different pick at 8, we're talking Super Bowl. And because you took him at 8, now we're no, that's not what happened. Right. So let's be honest about that. Obviously, there's people they could have picked that could have made an impact this season, but we're not talking the difference between Super Bowl and not Super Bowl. So if this only ends up being a 2-year deal with Kirk Cousins, or maybe he gets hurt this season, I don't know, Mo. But clearly what they're saying is we don't need to see Cousins for 4 years. If we think his shelf life is a year or a year and a half, then it is what it is. I know there were bigger needs on that roster, but there's these moments, and who knows if they're right or they're wrong, but clearly the GM and the coach were like, we want him. This is our guy. So roll the dice and do it. And either Kirk plays great for 2 or 3 years, and you wasted the pick, and maybe you trade him away and get something else, or Cousins is kind of a bust, and he kind of keeps Kirk Cousining it, but at a step below, and you're like, that was the mistake. The mistake wasn't drafting Penix. The mistake was investing in Kirk, and now we can rectify that. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah, look, I was with you, though. On draft night, initially, I'm surprised that he got picked there. But then when I thought about it, when everybody was in an uproar, I was like, Cousins is coming off a major injury. He's 36 years old. And they really believe, I'm talking about GM and coach, that this is their guy of the future. Then you make the pick. I'm actually a big Michael Penix fan. I think he's going to be better than some of the guys drafted ahead of him. I do. So I have no problem with the pick. And look, if Kirk Cousins is really good for 2 years and then they move on because Penix is ready to go, you made $100 million in 2 years. You're good. You're fine. So it can be a thing where both things can turn out right. Kirk plays well for them. Penix gets ready and he's ready to go. And he's on a faster trajectory than a lot of guys that were drafted with him. So I love the pick for Atlanta. I know a lot of people disagree, but I think Michael Penix is one of those guys who already played in a pro set offense, who can already read defenses and recognize coverages. I think he's vastly underrated. So I think it's a great pick for Atlanta.
And Kyle brings up a great point in the chat. Maybe they also looked ahead to next year's draft and they were like, we don't love anybody in that draft.
Right.
So if we were going to take a quarterback next year to start to prepare for Cousins being done after year 2 or 3 and start the transition process, and we definitely don't like any of them, but we love him, take him. And they did. So, Mo, like I said, we'll see what happens, but that's all that we have this morning. Close us out, sir.
Appreciate everybody from sticking with us, riding with us this morning, coming in with me and Chris, wherever you guys are going this morning, or if you're coming back from a long shift, thank you for tuning in. Make sure you guys check out all the great content that we have to offer to you at the Sports Empire. Oh, wow. What a slang bee. At Wire to Wire Network. You can tell this is Monday, folks. But yeah, make sure you check out all the great content at Wire to Wire Network. The Wire to Wire flagship show, if you are not watching it right now, they have one of the great brackets going on. Greatest sports characters of all time. Just make sure you delve in. Wire to Wire airs on Wednesdays, but you have to check out this bracket. I've already filed a complaint because they're treating Coach Taylor so bad. Just make sure you check out all the great content we have for you. Wire to Wire Network, we appreciate you.
We'll be back same time, same place tomorrow morning. We're going to continue to break down the NFL draft. We're going to break down everything happening in the NBA playoffs. JG might be here. He's on the road right now.
JG.
He's going to try to find time to talk a little Major League Baseball with us. All of that and more. Coffee and Sports. It's the morning show powered by Wire to Wire Network, and we will see you tomorrow.